So our Bible reading this afternoon is in 1 Peter. We're going to be reading chapter 5, starting at verse 1, and then reading the whole chapter. The elders who are among you I exhort, I who am a fellow elder and a witness of sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion but willingly, not by dishonest gain but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. Likewise, you younger people, submit yourselves to your elders. Yes, all of you be submissive to one another and be clothed with humility, for God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. But may the God of all grace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while, perfect, established, strengthen, and settle you. To him be glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen. By Silvanus, our faithful brother, as I consider him, I have written to you briefly, exhorting and testifying that this is the true grace of God in which you stand. She who is in Babylon, elect together with you, greets you, and so does Mark my son. Greet one another with a kiss of love. Peace to you, all who are in Christ Jesus. Amen.
So we've been gradually working our way through 1 Peter over, I don't know how long it is now, a few years. And we're coming on to the last, the final chapter, chapter 5. Just for context, it's really important to remember why Peter's writing this letter, who he's writing it to. He says, to those who are elect pilgrims, or those who are chosen exiles. Basically, Christians who don't fit in with the society around them. They're living in the places where they've been brought up, in this case, parts of ancient Turkey, but they no longer really fit in ancient Turkey. That's not because they've been suddenly transformed into modern Englishmen, but because they've become Christians whose culture comes from Christ. And that should be the same for us. We don't fit in with modern Tunbridge, whatever modern Tunbridge is like. We don't fit in with the culture that we live in, because we've been chosen to be exiles in that culture. We've been chosen to be different, to not fit in with it. And that's who Peter's writing to. And he's writing about how you go about standing out in a culture that doesn't acknowledge Christ. It says in 2 verse 7, to you who believe, Jesus is precious, but to those who are disobedient, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Christ is rejected, but to you he's precious, and therefore there's going to be a difference in attitude, a very big difference in attitude between your attitude and the attitude of the people around you. And in chapter 4, he gives us these 3 examples of managing and understanding the time that you're living in. He says the time for change is past. You've lived enough of your past lifetime, he says, in doing the will of the Gentiles. Now the end of all things is at hand, and so now is the time to love one another, but also now is the time for judgment. He says judgment's begun with the house of God, and God is refining his church through suffering in this context of people who are hostile to his church, and it's leading up to judgment which everyone else will face as well. The time has come for judgment to begin at the house of God. If it begins with us first, what will be the end of those who do not obey the gospel of God. Therefore, let those who suffer according to the will of God, he finishes chapter 4, commit their souls to him in doing good as to a faithful creator. So in chapter 5, this is the context, right? The context is things aren't going to be easy in the world that you live in. You're here as this group of elect, chosen exiles. How are you going to get through life and continue to live distinctly? And here are two answers in chapter 5. The first one is around leadership. He looks at Christian leaders. That's what we're going to be looking at today. And then he looks at Christian humility and the humility you'll need to live in this culture. And then he goes back and reminds them finally about what it means to be Christian exiles. So these are really the three parts of chapter 5. We're going to start first one today. Hopefully the next couple of evenings I'm here, whenever that is, we'll finish off 1 Peter as well. But we're going to focus in on verses 1 through to 5 this morning. 1 through to 5. Where he's really looking at Christian leadership. But this isn't just a message for a pastor or for leaders. It's a message for all of us as God's people. But how Christian leadership should look, what Christian leaders should be encouraged to do, and how the rest of us should relate to Christian leaders as well. So there's this picture which he's drawing for us in the first part of this chapter of these elders, these leaders who are shepherding God's flock on this journey through suffering. That's the picture that we have. This journey through exile. They're shepherding these elect exiles on their journey to home. So the context, the immediate context, is this fiery trial, he says, that's going to come on you to test you. You're these chosen exiles, you're looking for an inheritance, you've got a goal in mind, you've got something ahead that you're going to. What sort of leaders do you need to get there? So the first thing is the role of the Christian leader here in chapter 5. We'll look at the role, we'll look at the hope, and we'll look at humility, which we'll look at a little bit more hopefully next time. The role of a Christian leader. So he's talking about elders. So in 5 verse 1, he's not directly speaking to everyone. He says, the elders who are among you, I exhort. So there's all the Christians, some of them are elders, those are the ones that he's specifically exhorting here in chapter 5 verse 1. And the elder, it could be someone specifically who's older. It means specifically here a leader in the church. It comes from the Jewish system of rulers. That's how the Jewish government worked. You'd have originally a king and then supporting elders in government. You'd have the elders, the system of elders that ruled in the time of Jesus. But basically the leaders in your group of people, your elders, those are the people he's speaking to. And there is a contrast here, we'll see, between the elders and those who are younger. But the point with these elders is that they're the ones who've been selected and chosen to lead. So there's a difference between them and between the rest of us. So what should the elders be doing? What does their role look like? There's a lot of stuff we could say from other places, but what is it that Peter wants to really focus on? What's it about an elder that's going to mean that they can lead God's people through a culture that doesn't acknowledge Jesus? What's it about an elder that means they're going to be the right person to lead God's people through being exiles in a culture that doesn't fit them in? There's all sorts of things which you might look for, mightn't there? Might there be in a leader? And if you were looking for a pastor, or if you're selecting an elder from the congregation, there might be all sorts of things you're considering. You might be going, are they a great speaker? It might be a good thing to have, mightn't it? You might be going, are they a dynamic personality? Are they good with people? Are they the sort of person that people follow? Yeah, you might be looking at them and going, I don't know, all sorts of things you might look at, right? So are they good looking, and are they rich, and are they all sorts of things which might not be good things to have in a leader? But there are things which are good, but yet they're not what Peter talks about here. He doesn't talk about their ability to preach, does he? He doesn't talk about how much the Greek and Hebrew they know, or how long they spent at a seminary. There are some characteristics that you are going to have to make sure that you have in leaders if you can follow them through suffering to glory. Okay, and speaking, being able to read Greek and Hebrew is very useful, but it's not a must-have to be led through suffering to glory. Being a brilliant speaker is very useful, but it's not a must-have to be led through suffering to glory. Peter says there are three things that you've got to make sure a Christian leader is doing, and he's exhorting here the elders to do these things. So this means that there are things which may not come naturally to them, things that they may not find very easy to do, but the things that they must be doing if they're going to successfully lead God's people where he wants them to go. The first one is shepherding. Verse 2, he says, "Shepherd the flock of God which is among you." Shepherd them. The role of a Christian leader is to be one of caring and bringing people along with you to the destination. That's what a shepherd does, right? The thing with a shepherd is a shepherd is not it's not a fancy job, is it? It's not something where you go, wow, look at that shepherd. Such an amazing shepherd that all the sheep follow them. That person has got such charisma and that person has got such ability that all the sheep follow this shepherd. The shepherd's job is simply to get the sheep from A to B without losing any of them, and without any of them dying en route, and without any of them getting thin, and to get them from A to B well cared for. And he's not going to get special plaudits for that or a statue somewhere or anything, but his job is to make sure that none of those sheep die off en route. It's a caring job, but it's a caring job because not because he's necessarily the best person with sheep, but because he's determined that those sheep are going to make it from A to B. That's what a shepherd has to do. Now, this is the flock of God that we're talking about here. So this isn't just any ordinary bunch of sheep. This is God's sheep that need to be shepherded. And so it's extra important that none of them get lost en route. It's extra important that none of them get hurt and none of them die. This is God's flock, which God has shed his own blood for. This is why this flock of sheep is particularly important, a flock of people sheep. I'm just going to read a verse from Acts chapter 20, because Paul uses the same terminology about shepherding there. We talk a lot about pastors, don't we, these days? It's not a term that's used much in the New Testament, is it? You talk about elders, you talk about deacons, but it is an activity which is mentioned 2 or 3 times. This is one of them. Shepherd. The word shepherd is the same as pastor. Shepherd the flock of God. It's used in Ephesians chapter 4 that Jesus has given gifts. One of the gifts he's given is shepherds, pastors. And the other place, I can only think of these 3, is in Acts chapter 20. Acts chapter 20, verse 28, where Paul's talking to the elders in Ephesus. He says to them, "Therefore take heed to yourselves and to all the flock, among which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers," he says, "to shepherd the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock." He says to them it's going to be difficult and dangerous to shepherd these sheep because there's wolves out there, there's wolves in here, and those wolves are going to be after the sheep. But your job is to shepherd the church of God. And it's so important because these are the sheep which he bought, and he paid a lot for them. He paid his own blood for these sheep. Okay, so you need leaders in a church who will shepherd God's sheep with such devotion to get them from A to B because God paid for them with his own blood. It's an amazing phrase, isn't it, that? He doesn't say simply, Jesus paid for them with his own blood, but he says God himself paid for them with his own blood. This is why these sheep are so valuable and why you don't want to lose any of them en route. Shepherd the flock of God. So the first thing a Christian leader should be doing. and that's a caring for God's people, really caring for them because God values them that much. The second thing is watching them. He says exercising oversight, serving as overseers. Shepherd the flock of God which is among you, serving as overseers. The idea here is of watching out for them, watching what's going on, keeping your eyes open. Not just going, I fed the sheep, I've given them a Bible study, now they can all go off to bed and we'll see them again next week. But watch out for them. Watch what's happening with the sheep. And again, that comes from the fact that you really care about these people, these sheep people, because God has purchased them with his own blood. Oversee what's happening. Don't go, it's not my business. It's not my business what's going on. Oversee them. That's what you want in a Christian leader, right? Someone who will be, I would say nosy enough, but eyesy enough. They're watching what's happening, and they're being careful to oversee what's happening in a church. That's what you're looking for in an elder. But it's not simply a matter of caring and watching, but it's a matter of doing. He says, what you want is a elder who will be an example to the flock. Verse 3. Being examples, he says, to the flock. So we've still got this picture of the flock, the flock of God's people. God's people he's purchased with his own blood. You're shepherding them. You're getting them from A to B, watching out for, are they straying? Are the wolves coming? Being an example to them. The best shepherd, I don't know anything about shepherding, but the best human shepherd at any rate is the one the sheep can copy. You need an elder who you can copy and who, if you watch his life and you follow his life and his actions, he's not going to lead you astray. This is where it becomes very practical, very real, is you look at what the elders do and that should match up with what God says, and it should be something that you, as a sheep, as a Christian, can copy. Those are the three things he says that are going to be really important as you journey through a life of exile to God's promise of glory. If you don't have those three things, your elder, your minister, your pastor, your leaders, they can be great speakers. They can be great at organising. They can be great at arranging things. They can be very energetic. And those are all good things to have, but they're not going to get the flock from A to B. They're not going to get the flock from here to glory. Through suffering and through opposition, you're going to have people, like back in chapter 4, who are speaking against you, thinking it's strange you don't join in. If your elders aren't exercising oversight, you may find that some of the sheep wander off and join them. If you have people who are speaking out against you and aiming to harm you, even though you're doing good, and you need to suffer, it's in chapter 3, for doing good rather than for doing evil, it's very difficult unless you've got an elder who actually cares about the sheep, who cares about God's people, and is there to care for them, to teach them faithfully from God's word how to respond in that situation, and to make sure they've got all they need and they're fed and they're looked after so that they can deal with that suffering and the questions they have in their heads. It's going to be impossible to have a group of Christians navigate through a world which is hostile to them with an elder who isn't setting an example to follow. The elder's going off, he's doing his own thing, he's joining in with the drunkenness and revelries or whatever. He's not an example to follow, and the sheep will disperse as well. Now, it could be that you've got an elder who's trying to do all those things. It might be you're an elder, you're trying to do all those things, but there's still a wrong way to do them. So just read through this passage again and just spot the wrong way to do it. It says, shepherd the flock of God which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. 3 ways not to do it. Don't do it under compulsion. You don't do it because you feel you have to. You don't want to have an elder or a pastor or a church leader who is doing it because they feel they've got to. They feel no one else is going to do this, or because I feel this is something that has been laid on me and I must do it, but who's actually going, oh, this is an awful job. It seems to be fashionable at the moment I think you get pastors, they get together and they go, oh, being a pastor is such a dreadful job and it's so difficult. Our pastor was saying this recently. He goes to groups and people say, oh, how are you surviving? Are your church being really nasty to you yet? I'm sure they will eventually. That's not the way that pastorship and eldership's meant to work. You're not meant to be doing it because you feel compelled to, even though your church is such a rotten group of people. You're meant to be doing it because you love them and because you're doing it willingly. Because you want to work with that church, to serve that church, to help them through suffering to glory. You're not meant to be doing it, secondly, for dishonest gain, and maybe less in our circles and more in others. You can have elders, church pastors who are doing it maybe originally for the right reasons, and then perhaps increasingly it becomes because of the money they can make out of it, or the free house that goes with it, or whatever else it is. Churches in our situation don't tend to pay their pastors a lot of money, but if you're a pastor of a mega church or something and you can get a lot of money out of a big congregation, that then becomes a temptation. And you do not want someone who's going to be doing it in order to make gain out of people by taking advantage of them. But then also, you don't want someone who's going to be a lord over those who are entrusted to them. You might be saying, yes, I'm going to shepherd the sheep, and I'm going to watch out for them, and I'm going to be a great example, and those sheep better not disobey me because I'm in charge, and I'm going to boss them about. The point of being an example is saying, well, actually, you're a sheep shepherd. You are another sheep at the end of the day. You're there to be an example to them. You're not there to be lord over them. And again, this can be something that's it's a big temptation, isn't it? People, you put them in a position of leadership, and then it can be very easy to go, right, now I am going to be the one who sets the rules and is restricted, and I'm going to boss everyone else about. Yes, you should respect those who are over you, but if you're over other people, you shouldn't set out to be lord over them. It's something that Jesus was very clear about, wasn't it, to his disciples? Because Jesus' disciples, this wasn't something that was special to them, but they spent all their time arguing over who was the greatest, didn't they? Because they were in that position that Jesus had singled them out as these 12 who were the apostles. And then the temptation is automatically to be, well, but I'm now one of these great people, I have these great ideas, why doesn't everyone else do what I say? And that can be a temptation in church leadership as well. I was going to just refer to Matthew chapter 20. So this is where, one of the examples where this happens among the disciples. So Matthew chapter 20, verse 25. Let me see if I can turn this page over. So this is where the other, well, first of all, John and James have said, please let us sit either side of you in your kingdom so that we can lord it over everyone else. And the other 10 are very displeased because they wish they thought of it first. But Jesus called them to himself and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you. But whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. Now remember, this is, who's writing what we've just read? Peter's writing this letter. Okay, Peter is one of those 10 who's very upset because James and John wanted to be more important than he was, and he wanted to be more important than they were. But it's always stuck in his head how Jesus answered him. And Jesus said to Peter and the others, who is it who lords it over others? That's the rulers of the Gentiles. They do that. Your culture is different. You do not fit in with the Gentiles. You are elected exiles. You are going to be different. And you're going to be different as leaders, not just different as followers, but as leaders, you are going to lead by being slaves to everyone else. And this is what he's now encouraging these other elders to do in 1 Peter chapter 5. So this is what Peter's saying to them. He says, you've got these 3 things to do. And remember, he's not giving a checklist for hiring a pastor. It's probably a good thing to check. But he's speaking to the elders, to the pastors in this church, and he's saying, please do more of this. Please keep shepherding the flock. Please keep on exercising oversight. Please keep on being more and more of an example to them. And don't do it because you feel you have to. Don't do it for money. And don't do it because you think you get to lord it over everyone else. So that's what you need to be as a Christian leader. If you're going to be a leader, that's the sort of leader you should be looking for if you're not a leader, but you're looking for other people to lead you. Secondly, let's look at this, because let's look at the hope of a Christian leader, because that hope is really what ties all of this together. Because Peter's point is that as a Christian leader, or as a Christian who's being led, you have the same hope. And that's a hope that should define how a Christian leader works and how an elder leads a flock. You are not, as a Christian here today, you are not part of a flock of sheep which is travelling to a slaughterhouse. Okay, you're not being shepherded somewhere in order to be turned into mutton. You've got a completely different destination. You are travelling together to glory. We talked about this morning, didn't we? That God's purpose is that we should glorify him, and his purpose for us is that he will glorify us. And he says, Jesus says, I give you the glory that my Father has given me. And this is where this flock of sheep, these churches in ancient Turkey, this church in modern Tunbridge, wherever you come from, this is where you're going. It says, the elders who are among you, let's go back to verse 1, I exhort, I who am a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed. And then he brackets all these characteristics with this. So he goes back to it in verse 4. When the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. You are shepherding a group of sheep to glory, for glory, even though you're going through suffering now. And that's because you're doing this in partnership with Christ. So the first thing, there's 3 things again about this hope that you have as Christians, and that Christian elders should be keeping in their heads as they supervise the flock. And the first one is this, that you are partaking with, you're in partnership with Christ as you do this. That's what's happening in verse 1, isn't it? Peter's using himself as an example. He says, I've seen Christ's suffering, but I've also seen the glory that followed from that. Peter himself has suffered. He's already been in prison a few times. He's going to end up being executed for his faith. But he knows that he will partake in the glory that will be revealed. And he says it's exactly the same for you. Whether you're leaders today, whether you're ordinary sheep, this is true for you. You may be suffering now, but you will partake in the glory of Christ. And he puts himself into this picture together with us, doesn't he? He doesn't say, I'm going to tell you what's what because I'm an apostle and I'm really important. I'm going to lord it over you. He's giving a good example here, isn't he, of how a leader should behave. He says, the elders who are among you, so he writes these tiny churches in Turkey, I'm exhorting because I'm a fellow elder. I'm one of you. I've got exactly the same job as you. I know what it is to be a leader in a church. And I've seen Christ, I've seen how he suffered, I've seen how he led, I've seen how he is being glorified, and I've got the same hope as you. I'm a fellow elder, a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed. We'll share that glory with Jesus, and Peter and those other elders and your elders and Christian leaders and the sheep that they've led will share that glory together. And that's the hope that should be motivating every Christian leader. If you've got leaders who are motivated by something else, they think, I'm going to become really rich, or I'm going to get to lord it over everyone, or even I'm going to build the biggest church in Tunbridge. They're aiming for the wrong thing. The thing they should be aiming for is to get to glory with their sheep and with Peter, and with Jesus, and to be in glory together, because that's the goal, that's the hope that they have. So they're partnership with Christ here, but also, and this is another encouragement for them, they're shepherding with Christ. There's a chief shepherd in verse 4. Did you notice that? It says, you're shepherding the flock, and the chief shepherd isn't Peter or the Pope or anyone else. The chief shepherd is Jesus. Jesus is the chief shepherd. Your elders, your leaders are also shepherding. And the time will come when the chief shepherd appears. When the chief shepherd appears, it'll be seen who the real shepherd is. Jesus is the shepherd. You've been doing work for him. You've got a boss. He's the one who knows what shepherding looks like. You're following his example, and one day he will appear. It's not going to be always like it is today, when people say, Jesus, we don't think he existed, or we don't believe in him. How can a man be God? How can a man be judge? The time will come when the chief shepherd appears and will justify everything that you've said about him. And then that leads up to being crowned with Christ. So you've got this partnership together with him through suffering. You've got the time when he will appear as the shepherd who has been your boss all along, but then also where you'll be crowned with him. So when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. The Father has glorified Christ. His purpose is to glorify his people. And that's what elders, pastors, and every Christian should have their minds fixed on. If your hope's fixed on something else, then you've got a problem. It should be fixed on the time when the chief shepherd appears and you'll receive the crown of glory. Why? Because that is the one thing, like we said this morning, that doesn't fade away. It's the one thing that will last, the crown of glory that comes from Christ. Notice that Christ's return is not for him to be crowned. It's to crown his people. Christ is crowned now. He's ruling now. He has all lordship and authority and power over everything. But the time when he returns will be a time of crowning, because it will crown his people in his glory to share in it with him. James, to turn back a couple of pages to James. James says in James chapter 1, verse 12, it says, "Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him." The crown comes not because you've lived a trouble-free life and you've had one of these wonderful Christian experiences where everything is smooth and nothing goes wrong and there's never any temptation, there's never any trouble. It comes because you've endured temptation, because you've lived in a world that says, you're an idiot. You're an idiot for following Christ when you could be enjoying yourself like the rest of us. When you've lived through a world which asks you, not very politely, for a reason for the hope that's in you. When the chief shepherd appears, you'll receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he'll receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. So that's where the hope of a Christian leader is set. It's set not on, I'm going to be a really important Christian, I'm going to be a really successful or really rich Christian, but on the glory that's been promised. Which then brings us on to the third thing, which is the humility of every Christian. And here he brings in the rest of us into this picture as the humility of the elders themselves, but the humility of each Christian towards one another. Now, what we've been saying, there's this whole levelling, isn't there, in verses 1 to 5. There's Peter and the other elders, they're all elders together, and the elders are among the flock, they're other sheep who've been chosen to lead the sheep. But there is an ordering in what God is doing. And he says, you younger people, that's the rest of us, be subject, submit yourselves to your elders. Make their job easy for them. Yeah, you've got an elder who is shepherding, who's exercising oversight, who's being an example. Well, follow their example. Don't often do something different. Yeah, allow them to exercise oversight over you. Don't be a silly sheep that wanders off and gets caught in the brambles or falls in the stream. Submit yourselves to your elders. Make their lives easy. Set your hope on the same goal as they have and walk the same direction. Turn back a few more pages to Hebrews, keeping us in this half of the New Testament, makes less page turning. Hebrews 13 is a good place to look for how we should be treating elders who are over us. 13 verse 7, it says, "Remember those who rule over you, who have spoken the word of God to you, whose faith follow." Again, here's an elder who's an example. Look at how they've trusted God. Do the same thing, considering the outcome of their conduct. Think through how they're living. Follow their example. And then in verse 17, "Obey those who rule over you, and be submissive, for they watch out," is the watching out part, "they watch out for your souls, as those who must give account. Let them do so with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable for you." As any Christian, whether you're in a position of leadership or not, you can be just as involved in the work of the leader. You can make their work easy by letting them joyfully lead, by following them submissively. That doesn't mean, of course, that you go along with everything they say. You don't check it in the Bible. Even the Bereans even checked what Paul said, didn't they? You check what they say. You make sure that what they're saying is biblical, But you don't make their lives difficult. You don't spend all your time arguing about the colour of the carpet or whatever else it is that Christians argue with leaders about. You make their lives easy. You submit to them. You obey them. You follow their example. And you set your hope on the same glory that they're leading you towards. So be subject to the elders. But he doesn't say stop there, does he? He says, all of you, be submissive to one another and be clothed with humility. And this is where his command comes to the elders as well, isn't it? It doesn't say, you sheep be submissive, you elders boss everyone around. A good elder, a good leader, is one who's going to be submissive to one another. They're going to submit their desires to others. They're not going to go, well, I am the one who sets all the rules and therefore the carpet must be blue. They're going to submit their needs and their wants and their must-haves to others as well, because they, like the other people in the church, are all going to be clothed with humility towards each other. That means each of them are going to be looking out not for their own interests but for the interests of others. Whether you're the elder or the youngest in the congregation, you're going to be looking out for each other. Humbly and submissively, submitting your desires to the needs of others. And that's going to mark the humility of every Christian. Why? It says, for God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. At the end of the day, the only hope for any Christian leader or for any Christian of navigating your life through a hostile world to God's glory is God's grace, isn't it? You're not going to do it because you are such a brilliant speaker, you're such a brilliant personality, or any of those things, or even you're such a brilliant sheep. You're only going to do that by God's grace. God's grace is only available to the humble. It's not available to the people who go, well, I'm better than the pastor, or the pastor who goes, well, I'm better than everyone else. God resists the proud. He gives grace to the humble. He's quoting a form of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 34. And it's great to go through the book of Proverbs because Proverbs is full of practical wisdom, isn't it? And each verse is kind of a lesson in itself. So you don't have to spend ages reading the whole book. You can pick a verse in Proverbs. It's not always something you can do in every other book. But you can pick a verse in Proverbs and you can see an immediate truth about God and how we should relate to him. Proverbs 3, verse 34 says, surely he scorns the scornful, but gives grace to the humble. You don't impress God by looking down on everyone else. God scorns the scornful. He knows what you're really like. But he gives grace to the humble. It's not that the humble deserve his favour. It's not that the meek deserve to inherit the earth. But God delights to give grace to those who realise that they don't deserve it. And so every Christian needs to move forward together in humility if we're going to go together to the same destination. James again realised the same thing. Actually, he quotes the same proverb in James 4 verse 6. I want to read this one as well. He says, let's read what he says in verse 4. He says, whoever wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. This is why the Christian life is difficult, isn't it? Because the world is trying to make you its friend. If you become a friend of the world and you say, yes, let's have all those things in 1 Peter 4, right? The will of the Gentiles, the lewdness, the drunkenness, the lust, the revelries, etc. Let's be a friend with the world and let's go along with it. You make yourself an enemy of God. He says, or do you think the scripture says in vain, the Spirit who dwells in us yearns jealously? James 4 verse 6, but he gives more grace. Therefore he says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore submit to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. God gives more grace. He doesn't just give grace, he gives more grace. And he continues to give more grace to those who are humble. And that, at the end of the day, is what each of us need, whether we're in a position of leadership in the church, in our families, in the kids' club, or whatever, or whether we're not. We need God's grace. We need to humbly accept God's grace. And with our heads, with our hearts, both fixed on the hope that God's given us in glory to move forward together. So he's saying two things here. He's saying submit yourselves humbly to each other, but also, and we'll see more about this humbling in the next verse, which we're not going to get onto tonight, also submit yourselves humbly together to the chief shepherd. There is a chief shepherd. He's the one who's leading at the end of the day, not you. Whether you're a pastor or an elder or a pastor of a mega church or whatever, you're not ultimately the leader. Christ is. Submit yourselves to him and humbly and joyfully move forwards together towards the glory that will be revealed. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. So Christian leaders is really important. It's really important we have Christian leaders. And it's really important they read 1 Peter 5. They seek to do those things. Avoid the attitudes he says to avoid. And if you know Christian leaders who are struggling with that, point them back to this chapter. He's not saying kick them out and disqualify them, but encourage them to continue to shepherd, to continue to exercise oversight, to continue to be an example, and to do it for the right reasons. Let's sing as we finish. Let's sing our final hymn, which is another version of Psalm 23. So it's good to remind ourselves again at the beginning and the end that Jesus is the shepherd that we follow. So number 693.